December 3rd, 1984. Bhopal, India. It's a typical, stiflingly humid night. Families are asleep in their homes. Workers at the Union Carbide plant are finishing their shifts. No one knows that deep underground in steel tank number 610, an irreversible chemical reaction has already begun. Within the hour, the city streets will fill with an invisible fog. People will wake up to find their lungs turning to glass and their eyes being eaten away by acid. This is the story of one of the world's most successful chemical giants that decided to cut corners on safety. This is a story of how a single signature in an accounting office can destroy an entire city. Today, we are breaking it down minute by minute, how a thriving business transformed into the greatest man-made industrial disaster in human history. In the 1970s, India was undergoing the Green Revolution. The country needed to feed millions, and that required tons of pesticides. The American corporation Union Carbide, at the time number 37 on the Fortune 500 list, arrived at exactly the right moment. They built a plant in Bhopal to produce 7, a powerful insecticide. It was a symbol of progress. It brought thousands of jobs and high wages by local standards. The city grew around the plant. People built shantytowns, right up against the concrete fence, believing that proximity to the American giant was a guarantee of safety and prosperity. The key component of 7 was methyl isocyanate, MIC. It is an extremely toxic, unstable, and explosive substance. Even a tiny concentration in the air kills everything living. But as long as the business was making money, people preferred not to think about that. By the early 80s, the pesticide market in India had become oversaturated. A drought drove down demand. Union Carbide's profits began to slide. And this is where the classic tragedy of efficient management begins. To cut costs, management began aggressively slashing budgets. The number of operators in dangerous sections was cut in half. Experienced engineers were replaced by people with minimal training. Equipment repairs were performed less and less frequently. Rust became the norm. The plant had several safety systems in place in case of a gas leak. But by December 1984, not a single one of them was working. The scrubber designed to neutralize gas was turned off for repairs. The flare tower meant to burn off escaping gas was out of commission. Even the refrigeration unit, which was supposed to keep the poisonous substance in a cold, stable state, had been switched off to save money on electricity. The plant had become a loaded bomb where someone simply turned off the timer. December 2nd, 9 p.m. Workers begin flushing the pipes with water. Because of faulty valves and a lack of slip lines, water leaks into tank 610, which holds 42 tons of methyl isocyanate. At 10 p.m., an exothermic reaction begins inside the tank. The temperature skyrockets. Water, rust, and gas churn into a hellish cocktail. By 11:30 p.m., operators notice the pressure in the tank is off the charts. They smell burnt sugar, the first sign of a leak. But the gauges are so old that no one trusts them. The sensor must be acting up, they think. At 5 minutes past midnight, the tank's safety valve blows. 40 tons of poisonous gas erupt into the night sky over Bhopal. The cloud is denser than air. It doesn't float away. Instead, it sinks like a heavy carpet, settling over the city. The gas blanketed the sleeping shantytowns instantly. The children woke up first. They began to cough so violently they vomited blood. Upon contact with moisture, the lining of the eyes and lungs, methyl isocyanate turns into acid. People were literally being cooked from the inside out. Survivors recall, "We ran out into the street, but it was even worse there. The air was white. Neighbors were dropping dead mid-stride. Dogs, cows, birds, everything was lying on the ground. We didn't even know what we were running from." A massive stampede began. In the dark, blinded by the gas, people trampled one another. Local hospitals had no idea what was happening. When panicked doctors called the plant to ask, "What are these people being poisoned with?" Company management replied, "It's just tear gas, nothing serious." Just wash the eyes with water. It was a lie that cost thousands of lives. When the sun rose, the world shuddered. The streets of Bhopal were littered with bodies. In the first 3 days, between 3,000 and 8,000 people died. In total, the disaster would claim more than 15,000 lives. Roughly 500,000 people suffered chronic illnesses, blindness, destruction of the liver and kidneys, and genetic mutations that are still being passed down to children today. And here begins the most cynical part of the story. Union Carbide CEO. Warren Anderson flew to India a few days later. He was arrested but immediately released on bail. He boarded a plane and never returned to India. The United States officially refused his extradition. Union Carbide spent years trying to prove it was sabotage by a lone worker. To the very end, they refused to admit guilt for the poor maintenance of the plant. Finally, in 1989, they paid India a settlement of $470 million. Does that sound like a large sum? In reality, it amounted to about $500 for each victim. To an American corporation, the price of a human life and health in India turned out to be cheaper than replacing rusty pipes. Today, the Bhopal plant is a ghost. The site is still contaminated with toxic waste that has been seeping into the groundwater for decades. Union Carbide was later absorbed by the giant Dow Chemical, which stated it bears no responsibility for the legacy liabilities of the company it purchased. The story of Bhopal isn't just an accident. It is a tragedy about what happens when a business becomes too big to feel empathy. It's about what happens when profit in a quarterly report is more important than a functioning cooling system. We are used to trusting brands. We think that if a company is worth billions, they must know exactly what they are doing. Bhopal proved that is not the case. What do you think about this story? Should corporate executives face personal criminal liability for disasters like this? Let us know your thoughts. Stay safe.